Crystal, let us know when the live stream is going. Be just a second.
Message says the live stream is now live.
Okay. I think you're on mute, I think, Gary. There you go.
Yep, you're on. It's all live on YouTube. I'm watching.
I'm not hearing him through his phone, so no.
He's probably got his button pushed on this.
Now you can hear me.
Now we can hear
Okay,
you.
okay. So welcome to everybody, and I will call the Dunn County Solid Waste Recycling Board to order. And if Megan could take the a roll call, please. We'll go from there.
Chair Bjork,
Here.
Vice Chair Lenow, Supervisor Maves,
Here.
Board Member Erdman, Board Member Hartung,
Here.
Board Member Johnson,
I
You're on
see.
mute, Forrest. Hit your space bar.
Okay, unmute, and here I am.
Yep.
Here.
all right. Board Member Rasmussen,
He is traveling. He will not be in attendance.
Board Member Smolarek,
Here.
Board Member Stam.
Here.
Okay, thank you. So I see we have a quorum. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes of the July 7th meeting minutes? And if so, I'll have a motion to approve those minutes.
Chuck Maves, I make a motion, we approve as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve the July 7th meeting minutes. Any discussion? Additions or subtractions? If not, they'll be approved as presented. And I think we'll go right into the director's report.
All right, everybody. So right off the bat here, I've been reminded to remind you all that if you haven't submitted your economic disclosure statements, you still need to do so. To get those submitted, you should have all gotten those in your email. So let me know if you don't have them, we can resend, but we're still missing quite a few of those being finalized, and that's required by the county. Okay, first thing under staff reports, current fund balance. So I did get an update from Keith Stry, a little bit of sunshine. We have a current fund balance as of July 2020 of $236,966. That's better than what we thought where we would be after the 2019 audit was completed. So that's a little bit of good news. Not where it needs to be, but it's certainly higher than what we thought it was going to be. So 236,966. I was at the City of Menominee meeting last night. They had their board meeting and made a motion that passed 7-3 to withdraw from the county's program, become their own RU. So I wanted to update you on that. The only other confirmation that we got was a letter from the town of Red Cedar indicating that they were going to move forward with pursuing their own RU. Any questions on those items? Moving on to item B, 2021 draft budget review. So if you remember in the Zoom invite that I sent, I said I needed just a couple of days for the county board to first receive the 2021 draft budget before I could attach it to the invite. I attached it the following day after they received it. It became public information at that point. So did everybody receive the draft 2021 budget?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we will review that tonight. Keith Stry, CFO, is on the line as well. And I think we want to emphasize that we're really trying to stick to the the budget approval timeline this year and make sure that everybody has their say, but at the appropriate time. So tonight will be, I believe, and Keith, you can maybe explain this for everybody, will be the only time that we have the Solid Waste Recycling Management Board has input to change anything in the budget if they think it needs to be reviewed. So Keith, I don't know if you need to add anything to that or not.
No, just in general, this is part of the county board or executive committee's approved budget development calendar that they approved earlier this year, and all standing committees, including the Solid Waste and Recycling Board. This is their opportunity to review what was submitted and then to give their recommendation to the executive committee. From there, it turns over to the executive committee and the county board to finalize the budget.
Any questions on that? So in an effort to look at all possible avenues, to trim monies in the budget to lower the per capita for the municipalities that do remain in the program, we've been running a couple of different exercises and some possibilities. And I want to make you aware, I did send an email out this afternoon. This is all fresh information. Many of you haven't seen it yet. So I'm going to put something up on my screen here. But generally what we're talking about is we've got 3 special assessments that are worked into the 2021 budget. The one obviously is the BA adjustment, the $330,000 that we borrowed to continue operations this year. That will need to be paid back in full in 2021, and that has been worked into the per capita. The other is the fund balance replenishment, and that is 338,000, I believe. And the other one is depreciation, about 98,000 and change. 2 of those are static. The BA repayment has to be done. We haven't modified that in any way. It's the same way as it was in the 2021 draft budget. The depreciation is the same. We have that split out between solid waste and recycling in the appropriate amounts. That won't change, but where we do have potentially a little bit of wiggle room, after speaking with Keith Stry this morning, if the board so chooses to pursue this, we might be able to look at a slightly different repayment schedule for the fund balance replenishment. So what's worked into the 2021 budget before we get into this is a 3-year payback assessment. So after 3 years, with the amount that we are asking of municipalities to help us get that fund balance back into proper condition, there's a span of 3 years where that assessment will hang on until we reach about that $1 million mark is the magic number for a budget our size. So in the 2021 budget that is proposed as a 3-year repayment, there is potentially an option if you choose to look at it, and I'll bring up the metrics in a moment, for a 5-year repayment, which would help lower the costs of per capita to an extent for the municipalities. We could even consider, we've also worked out these numbers as well, a 0% payment in 2021, essentially a punt, if you will, and postpone the repayment of the fund balance till 2022. Pay now versus pay later type of thing. So I'm going to share my screen with you and show you a document that Megan and I were working on today. So what you're seeing here, and I've kind of explained this in the email, you'll see the budget adjustment repayment at the top here, 165,000. That's split between, this is for solid waste and this is for recycling. And people, I've gotten several calls from municipalities and a couple board members wondering what the itemized per capita would be for each of these items. So for the budget adjustment repayment, 165,000 times 2 is that 330,000. For the solid waste, that part of the assessment would be $7.19, $7.19 per person on solid waste, $7.02 for the recycling per capita for that budget adjustment repayment. That's the itemized per person per capita for that item. Then we get the next line here, the fund balance replenishment. The first one is the 3-year plan, and that's what is already worked into the budget. So 169,458 in solid waste comes to $7.39 per person as itemized per capita, and under recycling 169,458, $7.21 per person, and I think that's 338,916 under that fund balance replenishment, the 3-year plan. So the per capita will have an assessment of 338,916 for 3 years to get us right at that $1 million fund balance again, if all goes well. So the 2 alternatives that we've worked in here after talking with Keith, and I know Keith talked with Paul about this as well, and this is something for your consideration tonight. The board could basically asked to pursue a fund balance replenishment extension to 5 years rather than 3. And if we did that, you can see that the assessment lowers in solid waste 101,675, and it drops from $7.19 to $4.43 itemized per capita per person, and under solid waste drops to 101,675 for $4.32 per person per capita itemized. And then the second alternative option is if the board would choose to postpone repayment altogether until 2022 of the fund balance replenishment, that would be a 0% in there, and clearly we would save all of that. So there would be no assessment in the per capita whatsoever for fund balance replenishment in 2021. It'd be held off till 2022. After that, you'll see the depreciation numbers. It's a total of 98,000 and some change, split between solid waste, 52,317 for an itemized per capita of $2.28 per person, and under solid waste, 46,437 for a total of $1.97. So that's the itemized per capita. So essentially, what you have an opportunity to consider tonight is we've put together how those numbers, those 3 scenarios would affect the general overall per capita for 2021. If you look at the bottom here for the entire budget, the 3-year plan as it exists in the 2021 draft budget now, solid waste per capita is $39.36 per person. Recycling per capita is $39.45 per person for a total of $78.81 per person. Now remember, that includes the city of Menominee withdrawing and the town of Red Cedar withdrawing. So that's why you've seen that increase from $58 to $78. So we've taken that into account here because we have those 2 confirmations. Now, right below that are the 2 alternatives. So you'll see under the 5-year plan, the solid waste per capita drops to $36.41. The recycling per capita drops to $36.57 for a total of $72.97 per person per year. If we go with the 0 fund balance replenishment, the punt until 2022, we see the solid waste per capita drop to $31.97. The recycling per capita drop to $32.24 for a total of $64.22.
Morgan, because this here is not an actionable item on tonight's agenda, I'd like to put it on the agenda for next, like Monday, when we have the transfer station, like visitation. So it'll give the board a chance to look it over. So hopefully we can vote on it next Monday at the transfer station.
You want that to be an action item then on that agenda? So we'll do an amended agenda then for Monday's meeting, and we will add the action item of considering either one of those 3 scenarios. Okay, 2 scenarios really.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Morgan.
Yep.
This is Keith. I'm wondering if that's not included as part of the budget discussion, because this really is germane to which budget recommendations you want to make as a solid waste and recycling board. I believe it would fall within that discussion on the agenda item and action item EA.
If that's permissible, I mean, I didn't think it was, but if Keith says it's okay.
Perhaps County Manager Miller, I don't know if you have any input on that.
Must be taking a bath.
No, I'm here. I'm attempting to pop up my agenda, which I thought I had already in front of me, but I do not.
Okay, agenda item EA under the action, consideration of actions to be taken by this board, review and approve 2021 draft budget. This would just be an amendment to if you would go in a different route from what was presented in the draft budget. So I believe it would be part of that discussion item and recommendation from the board.
Yes, the agenda clearly states that under actions to be taken by the Solid Waste and Recycling Management Board is review and approve the 21 draft budget. But that doesn't mean review and approve what's shown by Mr. Girk. It means whatever this board ends up recommending, which can include these kinds of discussions. I agree with our CFO. It's important that we hear from the Solid Waste and Recycling Board about its disposition on the fund balance replenishment options, the 3-year plan, the 5-year plan, or putting it off for 1 year, because there's a domino in terms of the process. As you all know, the recommendation from Solid Waste and Recycling goes to PR&D, and then from a planning, regulations and development committee to executive, and then to county board. So if we push it off, I don't have the calendar in front of me, but I don't want us bumping up against the decision point from PR&D, which is next Tuesday, I believe.
Well, there you have it.
Okay, so do any board members have any, say on this, any
I do.
direction they'd like to go? Forrest?
Forrest has a couple of questions. Okay, if we're going to do the none, which would be easier for people to swallow, and then are we moving on to the 3-year or the 5-year after? Is that the plan, or is it just basically kick the can 1 year and we got to come back to this?
Well, that's exactly what it would be. Is it would be a punt until 2022, and then I would assume to make our timeline, we would go back to the 3-year is what I would recommend. So we would see that, that assessment that we see here under the 3-year kick in 2022. I think if we went to the 5-year, we'd be pushed too far out to get to that, magic fund balance number.
We'll
that's open to
volunteer.
discussion.
The fund balance is an important consideration, obviously. That's kind of your savings account for emergencies when they're unexpected. That's good fiscal planning. And as you know, we had to do a budget adjustment this year because we had cost overruns. So replenishment of the fund balance is important. That having been said, there's so much unknowns about this program and its future. There is some justification for consideration of deferring the program to replenish the fund balance by 1 year. I think that's the decision point in front of the board with respect to this draft budget for 21. Do we put off the replenishment of the fund balance for 1 year, given the uncertainties for the program as a whole, or do we start building it this coming year, knowing that we really need to because we've already encountered a reduction in and the need for a budget adjustment this year?
Personally, I would like to see maybe punt it like this year and then go on to a 3-year after that, because it seemed like if we can just get over the sticker shock for some of our partners, it might help a little bit. But I'd like to hear from more board members what your opinions are.
Gary, Ed here.
Yep.
Those in my calculations, those 3 items, it's the payback to the county, the fund balance, and the depreciation, all add up to for the town of Menominee, $82.65. That's a large portion of the increase. I do agree with you on the deferring the fund balance for 1 year, because we don't know if we're going to be in business next year. Why get put that money in there if we're not going to be in business? We'll know more in November, December if we're going to be in business. Then we'll start over with that. The depreciation, I understand that part of it. The other point I want to make is that the payback to the county. Yes, we're borrowing some money from them, and I don't know how stringent the county is on this, but why can't that be paid back over 2 years instead of 3 years? And the reason I ask that is because if we're not in business next year, we have some property that could come up for sale and pay that back to the county. So we could reduce this more if you wanted to, if we had the gumption to say, yeah, we're not going to be in business and we'll sell that property out there and pay the county back with that to get their money that we borrowed from them. So I'm all for that. And then the other thing I want to bring up too, Morgan, this payback to the county, the fund balance and the depreciation, has any of that been figured in on the non-recyclable items fees? You know, should we be placing some of this on that?
I saw Frank's, you're referring to Frank's email, I think, right? That he
Yeah,
had
we had that discussion this
So-
afternoon. We're wondering if some of that cost should be transferred to that and everybody pays fairly and equally if they use that.
So I'll explain to the board what Ed is referring to. Ed talked this over with the Menominee Chair, Frank Bammert. Frank thought it would be a good idea. Another way to help offset the cost would be to have increased fees for non-landfill items, electronics, batteries, bulbs, whatever, for non-participating members. I have two inputs on that. One, I think our fees are pretty high already for most items. I also think it would be very, very difficult. Matter of fact, I know it would be very, very difficult for our attendants to track that. The sites are very, very busy. It is so difficult for people just to make sure that everybody does have permits when they start leapfrogging each other at the sites, parking 100 feet away from the compactors and walking their garbage over because they don't want to wait in line. I could see the same thing happening with fee items. It's just really, really hard for the attendants to be able to track that. In theory, it's got some validity, but personally, I think our fees are acceptable where they're at. That's just the two items I would note.
Okay, Morgan, side note to that, are we right in line with other counties or other municipalities outside of Dunn County with our fees? Are we?
Yeah, we did if you remember a year and a half ago, we did a study on that, or it might be 2 years now. We're right in the middle. So there are some counties with higher amounts. There are some with lower. So I would say we're in the, if we did it as a percentage, we're probably in that 60 to 70% range. So we're on the upper end of fees.
Okay. I'd like some input.
Mr. Chair,
I'd like to ask, like you, Mr. Miller, a question that what like Ed brought up, would it be possible to make that payment back to the county like in 2 years, or would that be really hard for the county? I know the county is kind of hard up too. So could Mr. Miller expound
Sure.
on that?
It's a possibility, but I will observe that the same rationale that argues for deferring for a year, building back up the fund balance, argues for requiring the repayment of the loan next year, because we don't know that there is a program. If we say solid waste and recycling will seek to repay the county the $330,000 over 2 years, and the program doesn't exist in year 2, well, then we're out that. I appreciate Mr. Hartung's observation that the county has assets that could be sold and repaid that way, but those actually are county assets. They don't exclusively belong to solid waste and recycling. So it's true we could, from the sale of some of these things, recoup money and consider it that. But in terms of a loan to a program that's supposed to operate as an enterprise fund, I would argue the same rationale that says defer building up your fund balance argues for paying back the loan in 1 year.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair,
Yes, sir.
I've got some comments on some of this stuff. I assume you can hear me?
Yep.
All right. First off, as far as the fund balance, I would like to see us kick that down the road at least a year. I totally agree with Ed on that. I also agree on Ed at part of the payback. And I don't totally agree with Mr. Miller that this program has always been run that it was owned by the participating municipalities. And back when we started, we took the loan out, we paid it. And if someone dropped out, they got a portion of their money back over the years. And so if and when if we quit after this year, or after next year, I guess it would be, that the referendum doesn't pass, there would be equity there to pay back any money that is owed the county.
And I agree with Mr. Hartung that there's no reason we need a fund balance if we're not going to go continue in business. And we have $300,000 in our fund balance also. And we are putting money away for depreciation this year for equipment. So I think I guess I would almost lean towards not replenishing the fund balance until we know that we're going to have a program in the future. And I would almost lean towards not paying back the county this year to try to make it more attractive so we keep more municipalities in it. So we do have a program in the future. So I guess that's the way I'm leaning.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Any other member, like board members, want to speak in on this subject?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I believe, I guess I agree with what Supervisor Bartlett had to say. Definitely kick the can down the trail for the one part. And I would like to put off paying the county back also for the reasons that he stated. So that's my viewpoint. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members? Any statement on this subject? Personally, I'd like to at least pay back half of it, because they gave us the money in good faith, and I hate to say, well, sorry, you're just out of that for 1 year, but it's up to the board.
I agree with you, Gary. I think, we split that payment too, and that reduces it. We get that. We're being hit with a $82 per capita or per resident in the town of Menominee. And if we can reduce that by, I'm thinking 75%, it gets it down into the 130s, 140 range for us in that range. So, and that's coming down from 197. So it's a big savings. And, why take more money than you have to? If you have assets that you can sell,
yep.
You might as well use them assets to pay it back.
I may, Mr. Chair. So
Yes.
a couple things. One other way that we could possibly recoup some costs is, and we won't know this until after August 19th, when the deadline arrives for municipalities to chime in on whether or not they're going to stay or leave. I have been asked by a couple municipalities if we would consider selling the equipment at a site if it closes in a municipality that is pulling out. So there are some resources there that we could consider selling to a municipality that wanted to run its own collection site, compactors, office structures, etc. We've got used oil tanks at all the sites. So yeah, I don't know how much this would be. Obviously, I'm not going to look into this until we get past the 19th, but that is a potential source of some revenue coming back, plus the savings in hauling from those sites. So we would no longer be hauling recycling. We'd no longer be hauling compactor receiver boxes. We'd no longer be hauling demo boxes out of those sites. There's some significant savings there. So that's just another thing that we can consider for possibly reeling back in some monies that could be dedicated elsewhere, but we won't know that until we know how many people are going to be in the program. Secondly, I think this is another one for Paul and Keith, because at the county board meeting, when approval was given to borrow the $330,000, it was done under the consideration that it be paid back in full in 2021. So Paul or Keith, I'm not sure, if there's a sticking point there or not.
This is Keith. From my view, we'd have to research that and confirm that, but the county board can also still act on that based on what their decision is.
That was going to be my point too, is that ultimately this recommendation of the Solid Waste and Recycling Board will be given serious and due consideration by those who ultimately make the decision. If it's determined that there's something that constrains any recommendation from the board, that'll have to be considered as well. So I think this board should be clear about what it's recommending and we'll let the procedural stuff work itself out.
Okay, thank you.
So to be clear then, for the minutes that Megan's taking, is that what it sounds like that's the consensus of the board, is to punt for 2021 on the
Fund balance.
repayment for fund balance, and also on the
Repayment.
of the budget adjustment.
I would like to, Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes.
I could live with the repaying back half of it in the budget this year, with the understanding that if they decide that because of what we did for county board action, that it needs to be totally paid back, we still have fund balance that we can. I know it's going to be drawing it down more, but we don't know if we're going to have a program next year either. And so we do have that to fall back on if we put in there that we'll pay back half, and if the administration, after they've looked at it, decides it's got to be fully paid back, we could look at fund balance applied. I also want to mention something about what Ed had brought up, that Frank's point. I've been thinking about that also. And one thing that I have thought about is with our non-member municipalities have always used our recycling sites, and sometimes our solid waste, but usually our recycling sites for things that they don't have a place to get rid of. And oftentimes that has been subsidized by the member municipalities that are running it, because we just haven't charged enough in fees, and sometimes we can't charge enough in fees. So I would like to see that anybody that wants to use one of our sites for whether it's solid waste or recycling, for anything, whether it's the regular recycling or the non-mandated recycling things, if they want to use our site, they have to buy a sticker. And that would bring in the extra income, and that would make it fair for everybody. They're going to come. I know Morgan will come up with whatever the sticker is worth. And if they want to use our site, then they should buy a sticker. That would be my point. And it would be simple, and Morgan wouldn't have to worry about looking at different fees for different people. Thank you.
If I
Thank
may,
you.
Mr. Chair.
Zenon, please.
I live in the town of Red Cedar, and my neighbors and I go to the transfer station every week. And I can tell you that at least in my small area, we're all totally planning on buying stickers. Because we want a place to take our tires, we want a place to take our TVs, we want to take a place to take our batteries, and we know we're not going to get that. I shouldn't say we know that. We don't know what the plan is quite yet for our township. So I know, so I don't think there's going to be, obviously there's going to be a number that's way too much, but we don't expect that to be, way out of line by any means. So.
Thank you for your comment.
Yep.
So I would like to have the board maybe just kind of vote on this part of the budget. If we would punt and not take that for the fund balance for 2021, and then maybe pay back just half of the loan from the county. So I'd like to have some kind of direction on that part of the budget.
Ed,
Do you need a motion on that?
I think so. Just,
Okay.
that part of the budget.
I would make a motion on that, and if administration deems it necessary that the whole loan get paid back this year, we take the remaining portion out of fund balance.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And I think you'll understand that the motion that we not pay back for the fund balance for the first year, 2021, and that we just pay half of the loan back to the county. If we have to, we could take the remainder from the fund balance. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carried.
Just have one input on that, if I may.
Okay,
While I agree that there's no guarantee that the division will be around and having a fund balance wouldn't seem to make much sense at that point. Remember that if we do pack our bags and get out of this business, there are going to be costs in, taking these sites down. There's no guarantee that municipalities are going to want our equipment or our infrastructure at these sites. So there's removal costs to that. Same at the transfer station. We'd have things to button up there. We'd have a lot of things to button up, and that's going to cost money. So I guess I would just advise that we don't, completely strip the fund balance, because in a situation, if we were to get out of business, the fund balance is probably where we're going to go to make sure that we button up and close all the doors.
and I kind of agree with the county chairman that the equity that the solid waste has does not belong to the county, because the whole county does not belong to Dunn County Solid Waste. So to me, it's always been separated. So it's the county does not own the equipment. It's the solid waste board or the members of the solid waste committee and that of there. So I'm sure that there's great plenty of equity to cover any kind of withdrawal from that. So
I agree with you, Gary. I agree with you 100%. Yep.
So
one other clarification from what Dave had said. So we're getting late in the year now where we have to start thinking about permits for 2021. To your point, Dave, if we did want to assign a permit for non-participating residents, would it be a solid waste and recycling permit so that everybody's working under the same umbrella, or would we allow a separate recycling permit? I'm much for the first option. The only municipality that would remain if they decide to stay in our recycling program only would be Town of Sand Creek. And to your point, if we can't control who's using our sites through the permit system, like if somebody from the Town of Sand Creek comes to any of our sites, they don't get a permit. They don't get a solid waste permit, because right now and forever, we've only had a solid waste permit only. Recycling for mandated materials has always been free. So we'd have to know that going into our discussions with our printer for the new permits coming up. And I certainly have ideas for creating a permit either way, one for just solid waste and recycling, or a separate one for recycling. So I just wanted clarification from you on that.
I was thinking that everybody would get the same permit, and you would figure out what a permit costs by the per capita fee, just like you you decide the per capita fee, and then it's 2.3 times whatever the per capita fee is what a household fee is. So that would be your permit fee. With Sand Creek, I hadn't thought about them. They're far enough away from everything that I don't know that it's going to be a problem, but you could give them just a recycling sticker. But I don't think I'd do anything different. I just leave them with what they've got and see what happens.
The only issue with your logic, but the only issue with that is if someone from Town of Sand Creek does decide to go to Boyceville or Colfax or Ridgeland or Connorsville, they're not going to have a permit. The attendants are going to assume they're going to have to deny them service because they don't have the permit.
And I totally agree with that. That's why Sand Creek has their own solid waste system, whatever they're using, I don't know. And they wanted a recycling spot there in Sand Creek. So there's absolutely no reason for one of their residents to try to go to another place, whether it's Ridgeland, Boyceville, or Colfax. If that's what they wanted. They've got what they wanted, and I don't see a problem with that. Right now they wouldn't have a sticker, so if they tried to go to Ridgeland, they couldn't go either. I mean, there's nothing changing that.
They could go
They're not changing anything.
They could go for recycling.
They could go for recycling, but they've got recycling right there. So if you want to use one of the other sites, you have to have a sticker. Simple as that.
Well, under the current system, the residents of Sand Creek could come to the sites to do fee items. So electronics, appliances, tires, etc. So they do come to the site for those items.
And historically, the way the program has always worked, not saying it can't be changed, but the way the program has always worked is that anyone who is in the program, whether they're in solid waste and recycling or recycling, has access to all facilities for recycling. Not necessarily for solid waste if they don't have the solid waste recycling permit, but for recycling, yes. So that would be a deviation, one we can certainly look at.
If you wanted to come up with just a recycling sticker for just Sand Creek, I could understand that.
Well, that same recycling permit could be made available to any non-participating residents that want to recycle only and may have privatized services for trash.
Non-participating municipalities, there is some things that we recycle that us as members subsidize to get rid of that. And that's where I was coming from, that I agree with Frank that we have to take care of that problem, that expense. And if the fee structure is too complicated to have fees for members and fees for non-members, then we should make everybody a member. That's what I'm saying.
That would make it much easier, for sure. I've brought that up in the past. So just as a
Right.
reminder, we did raise the non-participating residential permit fee from $100. It's been $100 for quite a long time. We raised it $200. You approved that several board meetings ago. So it's $200 per year now. That's for a solid waste and recycling permit. So maybe what I'm hearing is that we require they purchase the solid waste and recycling permit, so they get all benefits of that permit then, and we have a single.
Correct.
Okay.
I think we better keep on going on the budget here to get into it and at least give us the highlights.
I need to make sure, because we're going into permit discussions shortly here. So
Okay.
I need to know how to prepare with the printer for what you would like. So I don't know if we need a motion on that, or it is a change. So
I will see when we get down there.
Okay.
That part.
Okay. So next, then we look at the 2021 draft budget. You've all had a copy of this for several days. I apologize not being able to get it to you sooner, but it needs to go to county board. They have to be eyes on first. So the only thing that I have added to this, it's basically just a supplement, and I'll show you. I'm going to share my screen with you here. So it's just a breakdown of the special 2021 budget revenue assessments for solid waste recycling. Now, we've already covered this, but I just wanted to let you know that this has been added. It was in with the county board packet, budget adjustment, repayment amount, the fund balance replenishment amount there, depreciation there, with the cost center breakdowns for each of those. So if you need to know where that's at, I can send that out to everybody in a new mailing, because it is an updated narrative. Getting into the budget, I will say this is probably, with all of the considerations and reworking and, conditional calculations that we've done for the 2021 budget, I will say this budget has probably had the most eyes on it of any budget in the department's history, which is good. We should feel very, very confident going into this draft approval that, you know, the finance department has vetted this very good. County board has looked at this. So I guess we'll start out with any questions right off the bat on what you've read, if anything stands out to you. Otherwise,
The only question I had was, why was the recycling profits like so much higher than solid waste? Is really, I mean, for what I could see.
recycling profits.
Well, yeah, like how much they made compared, you know, down there. They were like at 400 and some thousand, and solid waste I thought was at maybe only 50 some thousand, if I remember right. But there's a big discrepancy
In revenues you're talking about?
in the like the bottom line, the profit after expenses in that. I just wonder why there's such a big difference. Unless I looked at it wrong, but at the net gain.
You'd probably have to tell me which area of the budget you're looking at. Do you have it with you?
No, I don't.
Okay. I mean, I don't see that.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
You might have been looking at the budget adjustment page, which shows that assessment, the VA page. Which
doesn't it show it at the end of each like division how much they made?
Under revenue and expenditures?
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I think you may be referring to the budget summary. This is for you and Morgan and for everybody listening. If you look at the budget summary, I believe it's page 5 of 21 in the packet.
Okay.
And you compare that to, if you go down further to page 11 of 21, I believe that might be what you're talking about. Yeah. And
maybe I looked at it wrong, but I thought there was a big discrepancy between like the recycling as compared to solid waste.
Correct. Yeah. If you look up before, if you compare the first block versus the bottom line block, yeah, it does look differently. But if you look, really the biggest thing to look at is the bottom line, the green section on those summary sheets. Both of them have about $415,923 net result. So depending on which section you read at, it totally understandable. I think I was assuming that's where you're at, because they both do pretty closely mirror each other, because when Morgan put things together for the fund balance replenishment and things like that, they were pretty much a equal 50-50 split. So they were very close for the net result.
Then I must have looked at something different, but I would have swore that I seen that one at the net balance was like, 50,000 for in that area for solid waste, and the other one for like recyclables was up there to 400,000 something. But I must, just misread it. It wouldn't be the first time.
And there's certainly a lot of detail here. So that's why we're here to help.
Okay, thank you.
And to Keith's point, you'll remember another change that we've done is we've assessed the budget, made it a 50-50 split straight across for solid waste and recycling. We made that help to make things equitable for all the municipalities that are in there, rather than having, different municipalities.
25-75% on some.
Like that, yeah.
Yep.
So.
Morgan, Ed here. What we talked about, what we just motioned on a little while ago, that's going to change this quite a bit. I'm just trying to think now, is that going to raise that bottom line to 415, or is it going to go down?
We're going to have to run the numbers and get it back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, and we really we can do that as an informational in the near future, but obviously all of these changes will have to go in front of county board before we can make them, official. But based on what you're asking tonight, yeah, Megan and I will work on recalculating and take a look at what those numbers look like.
One other thing, getting back to Dave Bartlett's comments about non-recycling, I guess I don't have a problem with raising the fee for non-recycling like 10% across the board. And I'd like to see something like that happen. So, we're not average, but above average as far as other counties go.
We are above average.
we're above average.
Yeah, we're, like I said, we're probably in that, you know, if it was a, if it was a needle on a gauge, I'd say we're at 70, maybe even 80% of the, you know, the highest counties.
Dave is trying to, you know, brainstorm how to come up with how we treat other non-participating municipalities as far as this non-recycling goes. And
Non-landfill, you mean, the fee items, right?
The fee items, yeah. And Frank and I says, well, you know, every time somebody comes in, they're not a non-participating partner. There's a cost to them driving into that facility. You know, maybe there should be like a $5 or $10 flat fee for them driving in there and just using the facility to cover that. Is that too simple, or?
We would, well, and believe me, I understand all of this. The trick is implementing it. So to your point, you know, hey, if you don't have a permit, it costs $5 just to come in and do your business. How in the heck do we gather that from them? We'd have to have somebody literally standing at the gate checking every car, and we know that that's not feasible. I would agree. I think it's easier to make people to say, look, we can't help you here for solid waste or recycling unless you do purchase our permit. It's this much a year. It's prorated, you know, every month. So it's reduced every month throughout the year, prorated appropriately. And that's the way that you get an entrance to these sites and you get our full suite of opportunities if you buy that permit. I think that's probably the most simple approach.
So how would that work for the clean sweep? Would they have to have a sticker if we have a clean sweep?
Well, they would. So that's a great question. That's one of the things that we've been talking about. So we've worked in to this budget and this per capita, a clean sweep to the tune of $100,000. We absolutely have to control entry into the building for only those who have a permit. Because if you remember, we used to receive $8,000 of levy to support non-participating residents. We no longer get that. It was taken out in 2017, I believe. So absolutely, this would be very, very important the coming year to control that. And the best way to do that is to control it through the permit system.
Okay, thanks.
I will say one other thing, if the levy referendum passes, which we're going to get to in a moment, if that passes, that includes a county-wide clean sweep for even those municipalities that don't participate in our program.
Okay.
So there's consideration for that as well.
So when you put out the like the newsletter on the referendum, that'd be a good point to bring back up, that it'd be county-wide for the clean sweep.
Absolutely. That's a big part of the selling factor of that referendum, because there's going to be many people, if it passes, there's going to be many people who don't belong to our program that would get no immediate benefit, except if we include the clean sweep, which is very important. So,
because after seeing that on your 2019, like you were in review of almost like almost 2 miles of backup on 29, and I'm sure quite a few of them are going to come from Menominee, the city of Menominee. So
we
make a big difference
from all throughout the county, and we have reciprocity with other counties as well. So, yeah, I would agree. Requiring a permit for everybody using the sites is the easiest way to do this.
Yep.
So we will move to make a change then for the coming year, and we'll make sure that we get that information out in our literature. We've got the newsletter that's coming out in September. Megan and I are working on articles for that right now. We'll make sure that we add that in there. Very important that people know that change is coming. Okay. Another highlight of the 2021 budget, I would say, is the cost centers for equipment and vehicle maintenance. Vehicle meaning heavy mobile equipment like the loader, bobcat, etc., forklift. I jacked those up quite a bit in there. I added about $20,000, give or take, to each of those cost centers, because that's one of the things that we continue to be heavy on is maintenance. The baler is being rebuilt yet again on Thursday of this week. I have the quote with me here. It's about $5,700. That includes replacement of the hydraulic door lock and hydraulic knuckle that, if you remember, 3 years ago failed and could have easily killed somebody. So Includes a pump. Our pump is losing pressure on there, so the platen won't hold pressure. The wear plates inside the machine are worn. We put that machine through its paces every year. It definitely gets a workout. So I had to pad those budgets to make sure that we have appropriate funding in there for not only preventative maintenance, but also for corrective maintenance. And then also because our infrastructure is in the condition that it's in, we have had a lot of corrective maintenance again at the transfer station, doors failing, motors failing, panels falling off of the doors, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll see a drastic increase in the maintenance amounts for vehicles and for equipment. That's the reason for that. We never did have an appropriate amount of maintenance money in those budgets. So you see that big increase on those lines, that's why. Grants, Megan, there was a slight change in the grant, a slight reduction. I don't know if you want to, that varies every year, so it can wiggle a little bit. We didn't see much.
Which grant, the clean sweep or the recycling grant?
The recycling grant.
That does vary every year,
Yeah.
Based on the number of RUs and all the inputs to that. So, I mean, it hovers in the $155,000 range, but it's sometimes plus or minus a couple thousand. And obviously, looking forward to 2021, now that we know the city of Menominee and the town of Red Cedar have pulled out of our program, our grant will be lower than that due to their obtaining of independent RU status. So our grant will be lower than 155,000 next year, but we won't know until later this year what that will actually be.
The grant is dependent on how many participating members you have, that population. So it will be lower than what we've had in previous years if municipalities pull out. Are there any specific questions about the budget? You've all had a chance to look. We want to cover anything else in there? We'll make the changes to this budget and send that out as information for you shortly after this meeting. This week, we'll make sure that we make those changes, but remember, it'll have to go through board approvals to become official, but it'll give you a good idea of how that affects the bottom line of the budget. Certainly going to reduce things.
So do any board members have specific questions on the budget that was you presented to us a few days earlier?
Lauren, just curious on the storage issues yet. How are we doing, as far as our needs yet compared to what we're taking in type of thing?
Well, yeah, it's like 10 pounds of, monkey dung in a 1 pound bag. If I can put it that way at the transfer station. It's tough. We are, we're well beyond our capacity there for recycling, coupled with our inefficiency to process that material. It's very problematic. And the more overloaded we get, the more difficult it is to dig out because that material starts to commingle on the tipping floor. And then we're basically sorting commingled material on a 12-foot inline on the belt on the conveyor. Now, one of the very first things that I would absolutely ask you to consider should this referendum pass is an immediate conversion to single stream recycling at the transfer station and our collection model at all the sites. Now, what that would do is it would eliminate all of our need to process anything at the transfer station. So much of our budget is all that time that we spend sorting these materials and making really clean bales to sell back to industry because they won't take anything else right now. You have to have really, really clean product, and we're just so inefficient we do a great job, but it takes us a long time. So much so that every bale of just about anything we make down there, we're upside down on it by the time it's processed. The recycling markets just aren't there. If we do the switch to single stream, it would eliminate the need to bale any of that material. We would have to invest in a single stream compactor so that we can densify commingled material that would be tipped on the floor. There is a cost, obviously, to the infrastructure required to make that happen. The one is the compactor and hopper itself, which would be a through wall construction. That machine would be outside of the transfer station. I made sure I talked with our one of our representatives about that to save space inside the transfer station because we have a very small operating space. It would require a complete power upgrade to 483 phase at the transfer station. We're at 208 3-phase down there, and hardly there's like nothing runs on that type of power anymore without lots of transforming and you know, you lose efficiency in the way the machine operates if you force it to run that way. So there's a cost in that. There would be a need for a service drive to the compactor so that we could back in a walking floor trailer up to the machine, couple it, and shoot that pellet of compressed commingled material into the truck and then ship that to a waste management MRF or a material recovery facility that we contract with. Probably one in the Twin Cities, I would guess, might be the closest. And of course, there's a cost to that. You know, the cost of putting things through a MRF right now far outweigh the cost of or the price you're paid for the recycling. So, but I think that's really the only way for us to continue in the future, unless we wanted to invest in, you know, some rudimentary sort lines down there to be able to make that process more efficient. I would suggest we get out of source separate and go to single stream immediately if that referendum does pass. That would be an excellent use of those funds.
The only thing I would like to see is, because I've heard it costs about $90 a ton to take the single stream, and compare that to how much it costs us that we're losing by baling the stuff. I'd like to see the difference in there. If we're better off baling for a smaller loss, or are we better off paying $90 a ton to take our recyclables? That's a question that's always kind of bothered me about single stream.
Right. Yeah, we can look at the cost per ton we would pay versus the cost per ton we would sell if we continued to do source separated. My guess is that it will be far cheaper to pay the cost per ton to have it put through the MRF, just because it's becoming increasingly difficult to process all of this material that's coming in and to keep it clean. The other challenge here, guys, is that I think we're the only transfer station / MRF that I know of that does both operations on a transfer station tipping floor, and that greases up the recycling something fierce. So, you know, if the loader or the skid steer is doing solid waste 1 minute, they have an opportunity to switch to feeding the baler while you're taking a mungy bucket that's covered in baby diapers and, you know, rotten food, scooping up recycling, putting that in the baler. That's not a good way to do things. So we try to separate those operations whenever we can. But if the loader's unavailable to load trash for whatever reason, it's being surfaced, that we can use the skid steer to do that. Skid steer comes back to do recycling. Now it's dirtying the recycling, etc. So we can definitely look at a comparison though, but my guess is that it would be far cheaper to just do it from a single stream transfer. The other benefit to that is we would convert whatever collection sites remain with the municipalities that stay on board to a single stream collection model as well. So essentially all of the baffles from the boxes we use would be removed. We'd get better capacity, I think, in those boxes, and certainly more convenience for people. You know, single stream recycling typically improves recycling rates, but there's a consequence to that too, is you tend to get more non-recyclable stuff or wish cyclables in there as well. But I really think
Chairman, may I
that
ask
is
a
the way to
question?
go.
Please.
All of this is academic if the referendum does not pass. Is that not the case?
Pretty much so, right?
So I'm wondering, we should, as far as the budget is concerned, I would suggest that this board wants to look at the scenario where, assume that the referendum does not pass. If it does pass, we will have time to adjust the budget. We may need to do budget adjustment. I mean, the budget may be in final form and adopted, but there may be budget adjustments if we decide to change the program. But I don't know that we're going to get a lot of bang for our time and energy right now speculating on what we should do with the program, provided the referendum passes. I would recommend we go ahead, look at the budget that's in front of us right now, and make a recommendation on it, any final recommendation.
That sounds good to me. So are there any other questions about the budget? If not, maybe we should have a motion to send it on.
I'll move, Gary, to send the budget on to the next committee as recommended tonight.
Okay.
Changes.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Is that Chuck? Okay,
Yeah.
Chuck.
Yep.
So we have a motion and a second to send the budget on to the PR&D with the changes that we've made tonight. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So if you want to go on to DC, Morgan?
Mr. Chairman, if I may request, would it make sense for the board to go ahead and consider the referendum question next? Since we've been talking about it, rather than talking through item C, jump to D, talk about the referendum.
Status?
Just a
Okay.
suggestion.
That's just a real quick informational. So the county board did approve the request. So Solid Waste and Recycling is working on our outreach language for that. We talked with Julie Wathke. She has everything that she needs, but we will be putting together a nice mailing, a dedicated mailing with the reasons for the referendum, what we intend to use those monies for, et cetera. That will be put together shortly. We're also going to include that information in the fall version of the resource recycling newsletter that you all know of. There'll be a full page article in that. We'll also update all of our digital media, our website, our Facebook page. We're putting language together for that now. We did reach out to some of our constituents on the Arrow boards and SWANA boards, and I know Megan was working hard on that to get some lessons learned from people who have done this already, and we did get some good information there. So that's really all I have to say about the legislative agenda. It is moving forward for a November ballot.
You meant the referendum. Legislative agenda is next item.
I'm sorry, referendum. Yes, request for referendum.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, what I wanted to volunteer for this board's consideration, as I've given the referendum thought, we've got a number of our partners, the municipalities, who have asked in the past, well, what is this for, this $1 million? And we know that overtly it talks about providing funding for a clean sweep, all county clean sweep, and also for capital expenditures. But what does that mean? And gosh, what if too many people pull out and the program goes away? What I, in my mind, consider this referendum to be is a referendum on whether or not the county should continue in the solid waste business beyond 2021. We know we're going to be in the business in 2021. That's the budget that you've just reviewed and made a recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that is the question. And really what this referendum says, the $1 million for each year for 5 years is intended to be seed money for essential capital improvements that will be essential, will be absolutely required if we're going to stay in the solid waste business, as opposed to, and perhaps including, but as opposed to recycling, which has a number of different models that could continue even if we no longer do solid waste. So that's what I wanted to volunteer to the board to carry back to your constituents and people that you talk to. This referendum is about the future of the county's program with respect to solid waste, whether or not we will continue to operate a transfer station essentially for garbage as opposed to recycling only or being an RU for recycling purposes. Now that's one person's take on it, but after giving it considerable thought, that's where I came down.
No, I agree 100% that I think that will give us a good indication of what kind of support we have for like solid waste in Dunn County. And I know there's a lot of rumors out there. I had like Viking Disposal call me and they want to know if we're still going to have a transfer station so he can bring his garbage in there. He's kind of concerned about that. He just bought a brand new truck. He didn't know if we're going to close down and he'd have to drive all the way to Eau Claire. So I think that this newsletter that they've been working on will go a long ways to inform the people and just tell them exactly what that $1 million is going to be. And a lot of that, if it does pass, would be a seed money for a new facility. So I think it's how we educate the public on this here is probably more important than anything else right now, going in the future. So,
Gary, I got a question on that.
yes.
He's just saying solid waste side. So a new facility wouldn't support the recycling. So you're saying that we're only going to build this for solid waste and no consideration for recycling?
No,
I
not
didn't
at
mean to
all.
imply that. I didn't mean to imply that, Mr. Hottung. I appreciate you asked the question for clarification. If we build a new transfer station, it would be for both.
Okay.
But if the
That's what I wanted
referendum,
to-
but if the
Yep, I was-
referendum fails, that
Yep.
doesn't mean that the current transfer station necessarily is closed for all purposes, but it probably, there's a good chance, I can't say it's a county board decision. There's a good chance the referendum fails. We stop doing solid waste at the existing transfer station, and we would not build a new facility for recycling only.
Okay, so it would, yeah, we would, you're saying there, we could continue with recycling and just drop solid waste if the referendum doesn't pass.
That's quite up. That's a potential. That's one of the options.
Okay, all right.
But I think we need to make sure everybody understands that there's going to be a cost at that recycling if the referendum does not pass. And there's a very good possibility that if the referendum does not pass, Dunn County gets out of the business of solid waste and recycling completely.
That's, you make a good point. That's what I'm wondering. What are we saying here? You're saying one person says we're going to get out of solid waste but continue recycling, and then the next person says we're going to get out of both. And Dave, I agree with you. You might as well get out of both. You know,
I think
yeah.
I think we have to make sure that we let people know that we don't know if the recycling program would be sustainable if the referendum does not pass. I mean, there could be some options. The county could be RU for everybody, or, administrate stuff. But the bottom line is, how much can the municipalities afford to pay a per capita fee for that kind of stuff? We don't know. So I think we have to let people know that solid waste would be gone for sure, and recycling may not be sustainable. I think that's the way we should let people know it.
If I may, Mr. Chair, to add to
Yes,
that
sir.
as well, to back this cart up just a little bit, remember after August 19th, if we have, many more municipalities hemorrhage out of this program and the per capita is just not going to be coming in whatsoever, we may have to look at a way to rescind the ballot language altogether, because we know we're not going to be able to sustain into next year. That's another aspect of this that we have to, keep a pulse on. So.
But I was talking to a member of the Red Cedar Town Board, and they were very interested that we do not sell a transfer station. And I think the whole reason behind that was that they know there's a lot of citizens that have some recyclables that they can't go with a private, but yet they still want to get taken care of properly. And they also said they had a lot of people that were upset about dragging down that big recycling bin down to the road for curbside pickups, some older people. So, they still want the transfer station to stay open for the non-recyclables that the privates won't take. I see you're smiling, Morgan.
Well, the city of Menominee said the same thing. There's a lot of assumptions that will be there to handle that fluff that, commercial guys aren't going to handle. And that's a very dangerous assumption. So I've told everybody, don't think that. If that's an important part of your consideration, then consider staying in, because there's absolutely no guarantee we're going to be able to afford to be around to handle that stuff that we do so well right now.
That's exactly to Chairman Bartlett's point. If the message that this board and in our literature we need to make clear, the failure of the referendum not only likely guarantees we're out of solid waste, it possibly guarantees that we're out of recycling, and there's no promise that the transfer station stays open if the referendum fails.
That's right.
But I think there's a big selling point too, talking about the stewardship part of it. You know, I mean, what county, what kind of county do they want to live in? They want to live in one that's not taking stuff out in the back 40 and just dumping it? Or do they want a county that's like run right now where we have clean sweeps? We're taking these non-recyclables in and processing, like, you know, our like electronics, like 100% of all our electronics are being like recycled, you know. So I think the stewardship should be a big part of it too when that newsletter comes out.
Absolutely.
I agree with you, Gary.
Okay, moving on.
Yep, please.
Okay, so just backing up then to item C, just a quick review of that last municipal meeting. Like I said, Town of Red Cedar did provide a withdrawal letter. The Jennifer Semrau from the Wisconsin DNR, she's Waste and Materials Management, was on the call. She did an excellent job summarizing what is required to be an RU. And I know everybody was paying attention because they were writing furiously all the notes that she was speaking of, and we did provide a summary, a synopsis sheet with all of those requirements. Long story short, any municipality wishing to become their own RU needs to let the county know, and we will in turn, you know, and also the DNR by August 19. And after that, the DNR has imposed an October 1 deadline for all application materials to be received for evaluation and consideration. The DNR only authorizes RU statuses on January 1. That means that any municipality wishing to pull out has a lot of administrative work to do in putting the application materials, the application for the recycling grant, creation of a recycling ordinance for that municipality. Also, there's a lot of administrative work that has to be done. So, like I said, right now we only know of 2 municipalities, but by the 19th, we'll know if there were any more. The last thing I'll say about that is, in talking with Jennifer offline, she said that there is an absolute definite trend that most government agencies are slowly but surely weeding out of solid waste and or recycling business because there is a robust private sector, and county and municipal budgets are extremely strained. So many people who are currently working in non-mandated services in governments, that's kind of going by the way of history, because counties are really starting to focus on mandated services only. Remember, we're not required to do solid waste or recycling because we are the RU, we are required as part of that commitment to do the recycling, but we needn't have gotten into that in the first place, and we could certainly get out in the future if we need to. So just a couple points on that.
DE.
Yep. So the 2021 legislative agenda. Basically, this is we're doing the same thing again this year. We want to make sure that we have some ideas for our legislators to consider as we approach the review periods for that. Megan and I have a couple of suggestions for you to consider, but it's the responsibility of every board to, you know, raise these issues, and I'm sure you may all have some of your own as well if you've been thinking about this. The 2 that I would like to suggest that you move to approve to push forward would be same one as last year, increasing the recycling grant for the state. As you know, that's been eroded for years after there was an administrative change at the Capitol, and those we really, if any agency or program needs a boost, it's recycling in this state and around the country. So I'm going to have Megan explain how that works and the way the landfill tipping fees can be kind of recombobulated to bring some of those monies back in the recycling grant. But the other one I wanted to keep your mind on is, it's dear to my heart, is the fact that we don't have a requirement for residential a requirement for residential recycling of mercury bulbs. Okay. There is a requirement for businesses to recycle mercury bulbs. We're talking about fluorescent lamps. So, you know, compact fluorescents, the long, you know, fluorescent tubes that you have in your houses, things like that. Those contain mercury, and they are toxic, certainly, if they're not, you know, recycled or disposed of properly. There is, I'm not going to call it a loophole. It's just something the state's never pursued, because I think there was a lot of pushback perhaps in the early phases of it. There is no requirement for residents to have to recycle mercury lamps and bulbs. And I think that's a real problem from a stewardship angle, because when you dispose of these bulbs in your garbage at home and they get crushed, mercury can, you know, vaporize at room temperature, become a possible issue for you at your home. And certainly when it gets to the transfer station and to the landfill, that mercury leaches out and can become problematic. That's exactly why we have a business requirement. But for whatever reason, state of Wisconsin, no requirement for residents. That's one that I would recommend we push to have changed. But Megan, I'll let you dig into the recycling grant, and the tipping fees, so they can get a refresher on that. That's an important one.
Thanks, Morgan. So just a brief synopsis of the funding mechanism for the recycling grants from the state. So the recycling program, the clean sweep grants, and the prescription drug take back program monies are all funded through the Environmental Management Fund at the state budget. This fund receives its funding from a fee that is assessed on every ton of garbage that's tipped in a landfill in Wisconsin, whether that landfill is public or privately owned. So landfill fees, I believe, are in the ballpark of $14 a ton, and around $7 of those fees for every ton of garbage tipped at a Wisconsin landfill goes into the Environmental Management Fund. For years, since I believe the 2011 biennial budget for the state, we've had reduced funding for the recycling grant program, with monies from the Environmental Management Fund being used for other programs outside of Clean Sweep, the Recycling Grant Fund, and the prescription drug grant. So the ask over the past couple of years on the legislative agenda is to restore that funding at least back to the 2011 biennium budget numbers, which was about double what we currently disperse for recycling grants, to help support recycling in Wisconsin.
Thank you, Megan. Anything else on that, Morgan?
No, just if any of you also have concerns for that legislative agenda, feel free to forward those to me or directly to Mr. Miller, and you know, we'll make sure that we get it on on that agenda. So,
moving on to DF, the annual report. And I was just telling Megan and Morgan how much I enjoyed reading that. There's stuff was in there that I've actually forgotten a little bit, and kind of just refreshed my memory, you know. And I didn't realize how much of the deer that we took up to Barron, the amount of weight in there. So that's another item that probably wouldn't be taken care of responsibly, especially with that CVD now going around in the county and that. So does any board members have any question on that, on our annual report for 2019? Hearing none? Okay.
Sorry, Gary.
That's okay, go on.
The only request that I would have is next year's, the second to last page, is to have some past numbers, you know, maybe last year's or maybe a running 3-year total, something like that, just to, so it's a quick comparison is all.
Sure. We'll
Sounds like a good idea. Yep. Any other comments on that? If not, I think we're almost done. The next meeting, our regular meeting, is September 1st. And also, remember, next Monday at the transfer station inspection tour. That's at 11 o'clock, I believe.
yes.
So everybody try to make it, and I guess we got to have a mask there.
Yeah, you'll want to wear closed-toe shoes at an absolute minimum. If you have steel-toed boots, always a good idea to wear that. We will provide vests for everyone, because high-vis is we're going to be open to the public that day, so we'll provide vests for you all. Maybe if you could shoot Megan an email with your sizes, just so that we have the correct sizing vests there, that would be great. Otherwise, I think we're probably all XL. or greater. I know I am. We'll make sure we got something that fits you. But,
Sure.
and the other thing that we'll make sure that we have now is we're going to amend that agenda. So you'll see an amended agenda coming out here in the next couple of days that adds that action item for the items we talked about tonight, so that can, make it up the chain,
Okay.
the property timeline.
Any other announcements or suggestions?
Mr. Chair,
clarify,
on Monday, where should we park when we're out there? Where would you like us to park?
Good question.
Yeah, great question. The best place, and we'll make sure that we've got room, is probably back by the Connex containers, the shipping containers in the western part of the public drop off. We can get some cars packed in back there pretty well along that curb and in front
near
of
the
those
tire
lots.
pile.
Near the tire pile.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we'll make sure that we're there early to kind of escort you in and get you parked. It's going to be busy down there, no doubt, but we'll get you squeezed in.
Any other comments?
I just want to clarify for the agenda next week. I thought we made the motions tonight for the budget.
I think you're
Oh,
right.
you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're right.
I was going to
I-
say the same thing. I don't think
Take it
there's any
back.
item to include.
Take it back. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I
So
wasn't
if there's no
wasn't
other,
quite sure about that. Yeah. So yeah, we did everything.
Yeah.
so if there's no other comments or suggestions, we'll see you all hopefully on Monday, and we are adjourned. Thank you,
everybody.
everybody, for coming.
See ya. Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.